Hello, everybody. I am Cody.
And I'm Brent.
And we are the Hugonauts, here to review with you and discuss the best sci-fi novels of all time. This week, we have The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. And make sure you like, subscribe, download, follow, however you listen to us, so you don't miss our next episode, which is going to be on Check's Notes, Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. How could I forget? I love Snow Crash. We're so excited to do Snow Crash.
I'm very excited about that one. I'm also scared. I haven't read that book in years. I hope it's going to be as good as I remember it being.
Yeah, it is, because I read it recently.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
And one other quick announcement. We've started making some more content for y'all. So on the weeks that we don't release full, podcasts, discussion episodes, we're going to release shorter videos. If you're watching or listening to this, there's actually one that came out last week where we argued what's the best way to read audiobooks or like printed books. I was the printed books guy, as you won't be surprised to hear. Anyway, they're fun. Check them out on the YouTube channel. So we'll release those on the weeks that we're not releasing full episodes.
Yeah, and they're like you said, they're just short videos. They're not always going to be debates or whatever, but we just wanted something kind of off the cuff, fun way to fill in the off weeks and just talk about subjects that don't really come up all the time in like specific novel reviews, but we're interested in talking about anyways.
Exactly. All right, should we talk Andromeda Strain?
I think we should. What happens here? How long is it? Do your thing, please.
Here we go. Okay, 304 pages, 8 hours, an audiobook, published in 1969. We'll talk more about Michael Crichton and how this book fits in his career later on. For now, though, let's talk about what happens. So a U.S. government program is sending satellites with these scoops on them into orbit, trying to catch alien organisms that can survive in the void of space. When one of the scoops crashes into the Arizona desert, 2 soldiers are sent out to pick it up. But as they get closer, they realize the signal they're tracking is moving. Somebody else has already picked this up, and they've taken it into the very small town of Piedmont, Arizona. As the 2 men pull into town, bodies line the streets. In less than 5 minutes, those 2 soldiers are also dead. The U.S. government is forced to mobilize Project Wildfire, a top-secret emergency response protocol for this kind of situation, basically. 4 of the nation's most elite biophysicists are summoned to a clandestine underground laboratory where they have to race to understand and contain the crisis before, it destroys everything. The Andromeda Strain, though, proves different from anything they've ever seen, and what they don't know could not only hurt them personally, but also lead to unprecedented worldwide catastrophe. They got to solve this science puzzle. Okay, let's talk about it. It's a fun one.
They've got to solve the science puzzle indeed. Yes, I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5. I think it was a really compelling central idea, and it was also novel in its delivery. It reads like a nonfiction book, yet it is fiction. And so it was really cool and new. And the only thing that dragged it down a little bit for me was that the ending was kind of abrupt, but still very worth the read. Fun book. What'd you think?
For sure. I'm going to give it a 4. I'm sad to give it a 4. I've been giving so many 4s recently. As I was reading this book, I was like, oh my God, so propulsive. I was so excited. But unfortunately, it does slow down a little bit as it goes on. And yeah, I totally agree with you. The ending is not very satisfying. So that's why I give it a 4. That said, I still could not put this book down, and I read the whole thing in one day. So this is like an exciting, great, fun book. It's just, I don't want to be giving 5s to books that aren't perfect. But this is fun and great, and I really do recommend it highly.
Yeah, as a quick aside, because we've gotten some comments about this, like our rating, I feel like, our rating system is generally we don't give 5s unless we're like, that was one of the greatest books I've ever read. It was perfect. It stuck with me. Like everything about it was amazing. So we have a little bit of extra ceiling for those books. I don't want to rate something that I'm like, that was really great, but, it failed here and here, or like, I didn't like this much as much about it. I don't want to rate that the same as something that like changes my life. So, 3 and up 3 and a 4, that's also a good rating. We
Yeah,
only choose books that we like for the show.
There's
so we
a
like
lot
all
of
these
books we read that are bad that we just don't tell you about. So
yeah,
anyway.
and it's also a personal, you know, some people might have a higher scale in general, and some people might find books that we think are 5s more like 3s or 4s. But I just so it's said, we never review anything on the show that we didn't love that we don't want other people to read.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the most interesting thing about this book is that it is framed as a top secret document that has been created as like a retrospective on this event. And that's just a super interesting, you know, framing exercise. It makes the book feel like very visceral and real. And also like you're getting to see like behind the scenes. It's a really fun, good idea.
Yeah, it totally is. And the point of view, the I guess the narration takes is this third person omnipotent, you know, you're seeing everything as it happens. You're seeing the systems that the government's put in place, how they communicate with each other. You're seeing each biologist, but you're not getting too close to any one particular character. So that's why I say it reads more like nonfiction in its framing. And that is it's a really interesting way in reading about the science, because it's so science heavy. It kind of makes the science more impactful, even though it seems like it should have like a bibliography of these, you know, this
well, it does have a bibliography.
Study.
Yeah. Right. As a testament to how real it feels. Like there's a bunch of stuff in the book that is very clear. Like, okay, this is like a made up thing. There's a bunch of other stuff where he's talking about different like ideas and theories that are sort of phrased as facts and also just like, you know, seem true. And at the end of the book, there's a bibliography. And so I actually went and checked. I was like, okay, are these real research papers that he is citing? And it turns out, no, they're also made up. But that's the level of detail here and how real it feels. It was like, I'm actually not sure. Let's find out if these are real research papers from the 60s or not.
And it all seems rational. And also, speaking of like published in 1969, it feels like it could just be about today. Like it didn't date itself at all to me. I was actually shocked to learn it was older. There were like 1 or 2 details in the book that I said, wait, when was this published?
If I was in their super secret underground science lab and it could do all the stuff they could do today, I'd be like, wow, this is a very impressive place. Like, For reference, you know, I looked up, I haven't seen the film. I don't think you have either, but it came out in 1971. Oh, and I was looking at the trailer and it was like, oh my God, this is so dated. Like I'm glad I didn't see the movie first because I didn't feel that way at all about the novel. I just translated it into modern technology. Oh, that's interesting. I actually have good memories of the movie, but I saw it when I was really young and I hadn't like seen a lot of movies yet, you know? So maybe I just didn't notice. To all the parents out there, show your kid Logan's Run before anything else. If you want them to like Logan's Run, they can't see Star Wars first. You know what I mean? Anyway, maybe it's like
I liked Logan's Run. Actually, I just saw it last year for the first time.
You still thought the lasers didn't make you crazy?
You know, I can look past that stuff when you know going in, like, you know, THX 11, whatever, that first George Lucas movie is like, you know going in it's that old. You're just like, all right, goggles on. But I didn't even feel like I had to do goggles with Andromeda Strain. I will say about the movie, though, one thing, looked like there was a female who was one of the scientists, which is
good
not
addition.
true in the book.
Yeah, there are literally no women at all in this book, which is obviously not great. I would also say, like, if you're the kind of reader who that like bothers a lot, this actually isn't a super bothersome sexist book because they're not being sexist to anyone on screen. There just aren't any women, which is of course sexist, but it's like less in your face. So anyway, just that's
right. By omission.
Worth noting. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I will say another, you know, media adjacent subject. The print, you read the print and I listened to the audiobook. Surprise, surprise, after that shorty we did last week. But the print copy has a ton of, you were showing me like maps and scientific diagrams and transcripts to tell the story between the wildfire lab and the president's office, that kind of thing. And it makes it look really cool. Like, I'm sure it brings you into this. Does it bring you into the story?
Oh, for sure. That's part of what makes it feel like a real document. Cause like, I don't know, I've never seen a top secret document, but I think it has like all those lines on it about the time it was created and who's allowed to see it. Like, yeah, that makes it feel real to me. And so I was like, oh, it's part of the immersion. But yeah, probably.
And audiobook, just so brutal. It's brutal. It's just endless, like March 27th, 4:59 a.m. So I was thinking that we should go down to this desert, March 27th, 4:60, whatever, 4:60 wasn't a time. I totally botched that, but you get what I'm saying. They read everything that's on the page, and it can get really tiresome. So maybe this is a better print choice.
Might be,
even though I still enjoyed it. Definitely. Speaking of top secret communiques, this is a great book for those of you who enjoy military sci-fi but want something a little different, because it's not military, but it has that kind of
it has that vibe. Yeah, there's some military guys in it, especially at the beginning, and just like the whole atmosphere of like who is allowed to hear stuff and these, the top secret lab that they've built in the middle of nowhere. Just the whole vibe is like very. It feels like that in like all the best ways. I really thought it was fun.
What did you say? Yeah. Smoky rooms of military men with their escalating commands. I was like, oh, that really does paint a picture.
Yeah. Constant telephone calls to like the next most important guy. Like, we better keep sending this to the top. Yeah.
And the details of how that transmission is traveling through the phone lines, how they set up their communication network. So yeah, the character's really not as important. There's some cool scientists and they give a little bit of backstory, but they're not, you're not really as connected with them. They're more kind of vessels to like propel you through the plot, and see, how they're figuring it out. They're kind of, surrogates for good scientists, basically showing how science is done and how they can make mistakes, and how part of the scientific process is like making a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, and hopefully you don't make them so much that in this case, it's like very critical they get this thing done in a timely fashion. So the mistakes are kind of a big deal. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Something that really stuck out to you, Cody, was the sort of like the twist on the Fermi paradox that's in this book. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the kind of core concept. I thought it was maybe a real thing. Maybe there is a term for it, but we couldn't find it when we searched back through the text. But the kind of the core concept here is that if we are to encounter extraterrestrial life, there is a likelihood, which is something I hadn't thought about as much before, and I don't think many people had in science fiction, at least at that time. But of course, it's going to be far more likely that we run into very basic organisms like viruses and single-celled organisms, up to bacteria, before we ran into anything as advanced of an organism as humans or biological, like carbon-based life. I might be botching that because I'm not a scientist. Carbon-based life, is that also bacteria? Anyways, blowing right by that. Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet. So sweet. Walked myself into that one. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. The idea is that it's far more likely that we'll run into more basic stuff because it's more likely that more basic stuff exists out there, which is a really compelling mathematical concept. They even go through like, they're fake, but the percentage chance we have to run into different levels of organisms. And I just thought that was such a cool conceit, kind of opened my mind up to a new idea, which is why we love spec fiction sci-fi.
For sure, yeah. So this is a first contact novel in addition, just like a very different kind of first contact than what you're used to. And also, yeah, I totally agree with that conceit. Like, for sure seems like the most likely first contact. I'm hoping sometime in our lifetimes we like get a probe on Europa that can dig through all that ice and like get some sampling down in that ocean. Maybe we'll find like a bacteria, that would be an alien. That would count. I'd be excited.
Right. But it's not a Martian.
Yeah.
With death wands, like from Double Star or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Also here, Michael Crichton, we wanted to do a Michael Crichton for a while. We picked Andromeda Strain. We thought it was the most relevant, but he He's a cool guy. He
Yeah.
was a cool guy. He unfortunately died early in 2008. But
yeah, he went to Harvard Medical School and graduated in 1969, the same year this book was published. And he had published a few books before that, but like not under his own name and under pen names. And this was his first book where he was like, all right, I'm going to stand by this, publishing this under Michael Crichton. And obviously it was incredibly good and sure went well for him. And if you haven't read any of his stuff, we just, sort of generally wanted to say like worth reading. He's just so fun and propulsive. And we were thinking he's sort of like the Steven Spielberg of writing. Like it's the same time period and it's like super propulsive, mass market, but also there's like legitimately interesting novel kind of big ideas in those like mass market, creative content. So, he's an interesting guy.
And also a director. I mean, he wrote and directed the original Westworld.
That's a good movie.
I didn't realize he had been so involved in the film side of things. I guess I had always assumed it was just like his books were really great to adapt into film, like Stephen King or something. But he was really more directly involved in filmmaking as well.
Yeah, pretty cool. Well, I guess on that note, should we talk about similar books? Some of them are going to be.
Yeah, I mean that's a wrap up before we get to post spoilers. Really, it's a fun and interesting new type of read, and it's not that long. It was a good. We enjoyed it. It was easy, quick, and so similar books. Do you want me to start?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hot Zone felt so obvious to me. The Hot Zone, 1994, Richard Preston. Is a nonfiction book, but reads like a thriller about Ebola virus and Marburg virus associated Ebola type viruses and their dissemination and the science of how they work and some, anecdotal case studies. But it reads like a thriller documentary, and it's terrifying, but also at least enough time has elapsed. At least we have some precautions against those viruses now, but that's a really just an incredible classic nonfiction book.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it definitely fits the bill. Okay, I'll be our Michael Crichton stan. We'll specifically, I guess, recommend Jurassic Park. If you haven't read Jurassic Park, it's better even than the movie, and that's of course like a timeless, incredible movie. It's just like a wild ride through a dinosaur amusement park that feels like maybe that's really happening on some private island somewhere,
Are you all familiar with Jurassic Park?
Yeah, have you heard of? But yeah, other Michael Crichtons that are great. Sphere, Congo, Timeline. I actually didn't love Timeline.
I liked Timeline. Personal.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Good. Even Timeline's got its fans. But yeah, he's just written, and all of those books are like wildly popular. So if you've never dipped your toe like in, read some. It's fun and it's like a cultural touchstone.
Totally. Another one that's a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think that much. And you've all heard it here before, anyways. But Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the sequel to Children of Time. They're both great, but Children of Ruin has some close associations with Andromeda Strain, and it deals with kind of like a sentient virus, which is cool. It's it's different than the first one.
Yeah. And we're gonna give you more than 3 recommendations this time. We're actually giving you 5. So number 4, Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. It's about an alien object that's like coming into the solar system and this ship that's dispatched to investigate it. And it totally like feels like nonfiction about something that just hasn't happened. A little bit more like adventure novel-y than Andromeda Strain, but feels like it's in the right ballpark.
And something that's that also reads like nonfiction that is less of a thriller than both books is the Red Mars series by Kim Stanley Robinson, obviously classic. We just get to see humanity realistically terraforming Mars and then the human diaspora throughout the solar system and beyond. And that, but we had an extra 2 recs today because we were like, what else reads like nonfiction that is speculative science fiction that is fiction but feels real. And those are 2 great ones. So if you like it because of that, then those are for you. And that is our analysis of Andromeda Strain. Before we ruin the plot a little bit, do a post-spoiler section. We're trying to do this for every episode. So here it is for Andromeda Strain. Thanks for joining if you're leaving. And if you're not, Brent, give us the summary of the rest of the novel in 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So there were 2 people who survived in Piedmont. One was like an older guy who was a drunk. And then the other was a baby, who was just wailing. And so the team of super scientists has to figure out, like, why did these 2 live and everyone else died, so that they can figure out how to help everybody live, before this thing spreads. While they're investigating, a plane is flying way over Piedmont and it crashes. And just as it's crashing, the pilot kind of sounds like he's hallucinating a little bit, but he says that everything in the plane that's made of rubber is turning to dust. And our scientists are like, he must have been hallucinating. Like, who knows what's going on? Then, just as they're figuring out why the old man and the baby survived, there's more about the science here, but basically, like, one of them had more acidic blood and the other one had more basic blood than normal. So it wasn't in the good range for Andromeda, so that's why they lived. Just as they figured that out, the Andromeda Strain eats through all the rubber in their lab and is escaping. And this super top secret lab is rigged with a nuclear device to automatically go off and, like, cleanse the area if anything goes wrong. And they only have 3 minutes to turn it off. Also, in the course of doing their research, though, they realized, like, if you nuked this thing, it would actually, like, shoot it into the atmosphere and it would survive and spread it everywhere. So they're, like, racing to try to turn it off before this automated lab can blow them and everyone else up. They succeed, but then the book, like, very much just ends because they're like, oh, well, it mutated so it doesn't infect humans anymore, just destroys rubber. Okay, cool, book's over.
Yeah, and it got released into the atmosphere anyway, and it's over LA, and everyone's fine.
Yep. So that's that. But so the upshot of that is this, like, abrupt ending that's not very good is only like 5 pages long. It's because it's so abrupt. It's given that we don't like it. It's kind of a good thing. It's very abrupt. But yeah. Anyway, so that's what happens at the end.
You get so much cool detail on, like, how the lab containment procedures work. Like, it's like 5 levels, and you have to quarantine for longer the farther you go down. And there's all these, you swim through a water tunnel and then get, like, these showers. Disinfectant showers, and there's all these things. You can't have sugar in the bottom. You can't have certain food types at the bottom. They have to eat pills. Like, there's all these cool features of the lab that make the book interesting. And so the ending of the lab self-destructing and the people having to figure out how to hit the kill switch for that it's fun. Like that. It makes it
fun.
The whole process is fun. It's just that,
I liked the turning off the nuke part, but then right after that, when they're like, oh, okay, Correct. Well, it's escaped into the air, but actually that's no big deal. It immediately mutated to stop infecting humans, and now it just gets the rubber, and so we can't shoot spaceships off anymore. It's like, it's literally like you get like 2 more pages than that.
The climax just feels smaller than it should be. It's like, exactly. You think it's like part 1 of 2 of the climax, and it's actually the end, and then there's a denouement.
Yeah.
And so it's a little weird in that way. There's also something a little bit disappointing to me was there were some cool conceits raised while they were doing the science, because you get a lot of this, these elements of foreshadowing in the text, like the scientist, this guy was doing an experiment on rats, and he put away this population of rats and didn't do the lobotomy on those, or the like the brain autopsy. There you go. Good God, my science today. He didn't do the autopsy on these rats, which he would later regret. You get a lot of those drops, and you're like, oh, okay, what's that going to turn into? And what it really turns into is they're just making mistakes along the way. So they don't realize what the virus is, and it's part of like the natural scientific process. None of that stuff turns into
none of that actually impacts the outcome at all. Yeah,
right. And there's another cool thing that it raises where they think there's a part where they think that what they're studying, the compound, is a piece of an alien body that they're sending that the aliens are consciously sending for a first contact, like a liver, or like a liver cell even, or something like that. That's like, okay, we're going to send a piece of our body to be studied by humans so they can begin to understand us. And that's a really cool idea. And then it turns out that's just like one of the red herrings the scientists have to throw out as a theory. And I'm like, but that's such a cool, why not that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. The red herrings were like, they felt it like helped to add to the realism of like, this is a real scientific exploration. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Some of them were very cool. I loved the counterpart to that theory, which is like one of the ways to send information across like interstellar distances might actually be to send like biologically viable particles, because if you can get, you know, a really tiny particle and then it can replicate and like grow into your message on the other side, that might be more efficient. I'd have to think a lot more about whether that makes any sense, but it's a really fun, exciting idea. There's a bunch of things like that in the book. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So come for the ideas. The plot is still propulsive. And like you said, even though it ends abruptly and we might have wanted a different ending, at least it gets done with quickly, and it's still a very satisfying read on many levels.
Cool. Well, we hope you all love it, and we'll see you all in 1 week for a short episode, a short video.
We're going to talk about twists in science fiction.
The best twists in sci-fi. So check that out on YouTube. And then in 2 weeks, we'll see you for Snow Crash.
Yep. Later.
Bye.